who's as adamant about his or her position as I am about mine, whom you think is sharp. Seriously, we know that. And another thing, we heard him say that... Hey sports fans, Larry Elder here. Welcome to another edition of And Another Thing. This is edition number 35, believe it or not. We've done this once a week now for 35 weeks and nobody's chased us out of the house yet. So go to LarryElder.com or have your friends go to LarryElder.com. Sign up, become an Eldorado. You'll get a copy of my award-winning feature-length DVD where we explore the Second Amendment and where I actually confront, indeed ambush, if you will, even if you won't, the director Michael Moore. And 3 times I ask him, how many times do Americans every single year use guns to defend themselves? And 3 times the esteemed director struggled for an answer, in my humble opinion. But go to LarryElder.com, check it out. Now for this week's edition. I'm linking an article that I wrote for my syndication. It's called My Experience with Vouchers. The title varies depending upon who picks it up. But it's about the time when I was bused for 2 classes to a school called Fairfax when I was in high school. It happened because I literally was walking down the hall one day and I ran into Miss Workman. She was my counselor and she told me about some program called Apex. She was aware that I had taken all of the Spanish that I had at my high school, Crenshaw High School, and she was going to come to see me anyway. It wasn't quite happenstance, but she told me about a program called APEX, which stood for Area Program Enrichment Exchange. And there was a consortium of high schools in LA that participated. And if this school, for example, had physiology, this one over here might have Spanish, this one over here might have a calculus when your school didn't. That way, the idea is that you'll be able to enrich yourself beyond where you would be if you were only at your own high school. So I signed up, and one other girl from my high school went to Fairfax. We both enrolled in Spanish, I think it was Spanish 7, and in Physiology 2, having taken Spanish 6 and having taken Physiology 1 at my high school in Crenshaw, and I've gotten my, of course, customary A's. So I walk into this Spanish class, and these kids were fluent. I don't mean fluent in the halting, bad grammar, bad syntax way that I was. Everybody was speaking Spanish. If you needed something, you raised your hand and you spoke in Spanish. If you couldn't communicate in Spanish, you just better not, you better try and hold it, because you can't raise your hand and say I have to go to the bathroom unless you can say it in Spanish. That's how these kids were. The expectation was much higher. Also in my physiology class, I worked harder than I worked in either of my classes up until I went to Fairfax, and I was struggling in both cases. I ultimately raised my grade up, but it showed me how much better I would have been had I been at a school where the teachers were more exacting, where the kids were more interested in academia, where the standard was higher. I realized that these teachers at my high school, my urban inner city high school, Crenshaw High School, which years later, by the way, Time magazine referred to as Fort Crenshaw. Right now, the students at my high school in math, only 3% can do math at grade level. I didn't say 30, I said 3. That is not a typo. That is how bad that school has become. And compared to Fairfax, even back then, that's how bad it was. This is why I so strongly promote vouchers. Vouchers allow the money to follow the kid rather than the other way around. And there's a reason that President Obama, bless him, has Sasha and Malia in private schools, and they've never been in a public school to my knowledge. When he was teaching at University of Chicago, there's a elementary school that is associated with the university. He had his girls enrolled there. And then when he moved to Washington, D.C. as a senator and now as president, he kicked the tires at a bunch of schools, including public schools, giving you the impression that maybe he was considering that. After all, Amy Carter, the daughter of Jimmy Carter, went to a public school, but he had no intention of going to a public school in D.C. Wiener, all the way to the White House. Pat from L.A., I felt your rage over Piers Morgan's comments, and I was invigorated with the bitch slap that you gave him. It's about time that these dumb liberals get told off, because we don't need their coddling. We have a great history of contributions and achievement to stand on. Do you think that racism from liberals is more insidious? They tend to hide it by trying to be too helpful because they think we are too stupid to accomplish great things without their help. Pat, I do think it's more insidious. And the reason it's more insidious is sort of the way that, who's the religious scholar put it, who wrote Mere Christianity, I'll think of it in a second. He said that people like this are moral busybodies, and they're worse than sometimes what people consider to be evils, because they think they do it with your best interest. So when people are doing stuff with your best interest that hurts you, it's much more difficult to get them to dissuade from doing it, because they feel that, well, as long as my intentions are good, even if the results are bad, I'll just keep going. I hope you enjoyed this small excerpt. If you want to see the full video, got to be in El Dorado. Go to my website, larryota.com, log in, fill out the form. It'll cost you about $4.75 a month, or about the price of a mocha frappuccino latte at your favorite coffee house. As you can tell, I don't like coffee. I'm a tea drinker. See you next time.